Welcome to the Tackling Tech podcast, powered by Dyknow. Join us as we tackle all things ed tech with insightful interviews, actionable tips, and strategies that you can implement in your school or district to make technology integration more effective. Whether you're a teacher, a tech coach, or a technology administrator, we're giving you an advantage in your role by sharing stories from people who are passionate about working with their peers and enhancing the learning experience with technology. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Now let's tackle some tech.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Tackling Tech, a podcast that shares stories about how you can build better collaboration in K-12 schools, and a show that is dedicated to putting a voice to remote learning. I am Brett McGrath, Vice President of Marketing at Dyknow, and I couldn't be more excited to share this one with you today. So the conversation, I gotta be honest, was off the hook. Yes, off the hook. I am really excited about it. I sent a couple Slack messages after I got done recording, and I knew this was a gem, so I'm really excited to share this out with you. Of course, first, we've always got some housekeeping before we jump into the conversation. If you follow Dyknow or Tackling Tech on any of the social channels, you probably already heard about this, but I'm here to formally announce the Progressive Learning Conference that will be hosted by Dyknow, and it's not just a one-day thing, it's a whole week thing. So we'll be hosting Progressive Learning Conference on Progressive Learning Week. That'll start September 21st, and it'll end on September 25th. So I know you all are busy, you are back to school, you've got classes, and who's got time for a digital conference? Well, we're trying to make it as easy as possible for you to get access and consume the content that we will be sharing. We will lead it off on Monday with a live keynote that'll be at 12 noon Eastern, and it will be with former Tackling Tech guest Tara Martin. She is an incredible author, a great thought leader in the space, but she will deliver a keynote on blended learning. I know blended learning has been just such a important topic on this show, and we felt like she was the right person to help deliver some inspiration regarding blended learning to kick off the conference in the week. We'll be following it in the following days by some recorded sessions, so you will have access to those recordings, and all you have to do is sign up. Some of the topics we will have on those recordings, we'll have one on personalized learning, and that'll be with Jill Thompson. She's the former director of personalized learning at Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools. We've got some former guests collaborating on Tackling Tech to discuss flipped classroom, and that'll be Kyle Nemes, Eric Geis, and Nick Johnson. We're bringing Chris Woods back to talk STEM, and Jorge Valenzuela will be joining us. And he's a former tech coach and education consultant, and he'll be talking about project-based learning and social-emotional learning. So there is a lot shaken. All you have to do is go visit us at Dyknow.com. There'll be a banner up at the top. Sign up. As long as you sign up, we'll give you access to the content. That is something that we are super excited about. Sorry, I got my emails going off as I'm doing the recording. The work never stops. I should have hit stop on that, but that's okay. We're going to keep charging forward. Emails can wait as I am recording here and talking with all of you. So definitely the conference is going to be super cool. All the people are very smart. They're subject matter experts in their area, and we are really excited to put Tackling Tech and put Dyknow behind progressive learning because we know it's important. I think schools everywhere are forced to embrace progressive learning strategies given the combination of in-person, remote, and hybrid learning. Progressive learning requires technology, right? Student devices, and the amount of devices that are entering K-12 schools are at an all-time high. So what we want to make sure we're doing is provide you some access to some of the industry leaders that have been there and done that. So go sign up. What are you doing? Go sign up for that. It'll be a lot of fun. You can follow us on all of our social channels across, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram even. Go check us out. That can be at Dyknow and Tackling Tech Pod. You're going to want to check us out there. We're going to be pumping up the event, sharing some more information about those presenters we're going to have. Definitely, if you like what you've been hearing on Tackling Tech, give us a subscribe, won't you? Leave us a review. We do appreciate that. All right, let's jump into the conversation. So, this is a first on the Tackling Tech podcast. It is our first superintendent. So we brought on Darrin Peppard, who is a superintendent in Colorado, has had a long career in K-12, 25 years of experience, more than half of those years in a leadership role. And he caught our attention. He has written a book called Road to Awesome. Go check that out if you haven't seen it already. We'll put it in the show notes. But what an incredible guy. I mean, he's got an awesome story about leading people through challenging times. And I think for me, the storytelling he shared and where he got from, where he started to where he is today is quite incredible. And this is a man that's super authentic, super passionate about education, super passionate about leadership, and is the type of guest we aspire to have on these episodes of Tackling Tech. I know you're going to enjoy this one, so definitely take what he has said to heart. There's some of those themes and ideas I certainly have in my role. But without further ado, let's kick it to the conversation. All right, everybody. I am really excited for this conversation. And I will say it is a first on Tackling Tech. So I was thinking about this before I jumped on with today's guest. This is the first superintendent that we have on Tackling Tech. So I think that's super exciting. And so I am joined by Darrin Peppard. He is the superintendent at West Grand School District. And looking back and talking with him before this, he has 25 years of experience in K-12 in various roles. Most of those years spent in leadership roles at the leadership level. So that's what I'm super excited to talk about, focusing in on leadership, because I think that's something that's super critical, especially at this time that we're all going back to school. But without further ado, how are you doing today, Darrin?
Oh, thanks, Brett. I appreciate you having me on. I'm doing all right. It's you just kind of hit it on the head that as we go back to school. So I'm running around kind of frantic, trying to look calm and bring that level of calmness to everybody who works here in my district, to have them take a few deep breaths. Our kids will be coming to school Monday, and we're excited, but also there's a little bit of crunch.
Yeah. And so what just in your role within your district, what are you finding? Obviously this is an atypical time, but what are you finding to be your kind of primary responsibilities right before everyone goes back? What are you focusing on right now?
I've shifted my focus this week. Last week it was, let's get everybody in. We had what we felt and what turned out to be very powerful training. And so I was really kind of channeling, that instructional leader, focusing on teaching and learning. This week, however, honestly, my job as I am seeing it this week is to be that person who is inspiring others and helping them get their mind focused on what's really important right now. And by that, I don't mean that, the safety of our kids, safety of our faculty is not important. It is, but we've done the work to have the protocols in place and all of the other things. So right now it's, what's important is getting our kids in the building, helping them feel safe, socially, emotionally, mentally, and right now helping my adults feel that way and getting them fired up. So for me, it's been very much trying to be that, channeling that inspirational leader for this week.
Yeah. And how much of the spring semester and that experience that you went through with the staff and the students, how much are you kind of pointing back to those times, to that period of time when you're trying to get people in the right state of mind heading back into the classroom for this back to school?
I think there's a decent amount of the looking back, and really probably from a couple of perspectives. One, to look back and, be proud of ourselves. We were able to flip from, brick and mortar face-to-face instruction to an online platform in 2 days. And, yes, we're a small district, and I know for, a lot of larger districts, it took a couple of weeks, but we need to take a lot of pride in that work. And I don't want them to lose sight of that. But I also want them, the other perspective is I want them to think about and realize that we have to set normal aside. I hear the word all the time. I just want things to be normal again.
Yeah.
Or the other thing you hear is this is our new normal. Well, let's be honest, normal doesn't exist. And even when we do get to normal, it's not going to be what it was on March 12th. To me, March 13th is kind of that day where it all turned. And we shouldn't actually strive for normal on March 12th. We've taken this huge shock to our system, both in education and also just in society in general. And to look back and want to return to normal would be taking a step backwards. So the things that I think about, and I'm kind of bird walking from your question, but the things that I think about that we learned during that time frame, and specifically for me at the leadership level, we did have that shock to the system. And I think that, now parents will and should expect more. We should deliver more. And we have an opportunity right now because of what we learned during that time, and then what time we had this summer to prepare. We have an opportunity to create something that's a lot better than it was on March 12th. So there's a lot of lessons in there to look back on, but I think it's about, finding the perspective around where we were and where we're going, and let's cut the cord, sever the tie, trying to get us back where we were. Let's go forward.
Yeah, I think that's strong perspective. And that's something that, I think is powerful. And I think it isn't just a message coming from, you to everybody else, but it kind of takes the element of everyone kind of taking their own leadership skills and putting them to work. And I think that's what I've gathered you talk a lot about, and just having intention behind it, aligning values and beliefs, being adaptable, evolving as things happen. And then the one thing too, I picked up on just from doing some research on you is the importance of building a great culture within that school or within that district. So I think that's probably, I'm not talking with you, probably a lot of what you're talking to your staff about is along the lines of those 4 buckets and elements. Am I on track or off track with that?
No, I think you're absolutely on track. Yeah, there's kind of, 6 things that I hold very near and dear as a leader, and honestly as a human being. And I talked a little bit about, how this week I've been kind of focusing on being kind of that person to inspire, where before I was kind of focused on that instructional leadership type of thing. For me, really, you already mentioned it, but, it starts with being very clear with what you value, what is really, truly important to you. As a leader, what are those things you're willing to die on the hill for? And, for me, there's a handful of those things, and they all come back to relationships, and they all come back to people. Yeah, I'm a strong believer that any standardized testing is nothing more than a dipstick. You have dipsticks in your car to check your oil. You have a dipstick in your car to check your power steering fluid. Our standardized tests really should just be that. How are we doing? They should never be used to place a label or an identity on a kid or tell you what a kid's capable of. The same thing is true of your schools. Those scores shouldn't be used for that. So I focus very much and lead from a place of, knowing that teachers are incredible people. and they're incredibly professional people. And we've got to do everything we can to give them opportunities to be creative, to be innovative. And we need to trust them to do their work because, again, they're professional. I believe that our kids are ready to be leaders now, and we can't just sit around and say, well, eventually, these kids will be leaders. Well, why would we wait? I can tell you thousands of stories through my 25 years in education where, kids have stepped in and taken on, and done things that demonstrate incredible leadership. I think there's a great deal of power in coaching people, coaching leaders. Coaching gets a bad rap, except for like coaching athletics, which I did do and I loved doing. But coaching leadership and coaching teachers sometimes is looked at as one of those things that you only get a coach if you're not doing well. And then the last one that's kind of that place that I lead from. And I think this is critical in education because as educators, we're not good at it. And that is telling our story. There really almost should be an education marketing course that every educator has to go through because we're doing such incredible things. And typically schools, the story of the school, if we don't tell it, is about whatever our test scores are. And that just doesn't sufficiently tell anybody's story.
Totally. Well, you're tugging at my heartstrings as a marketer, and I do believe in the power of telling stories. People remember them. It's a good way to convey what you're doing. And I think that's an interesting perspective. And I think all of what you just described bottled up probably was inspiration behind the book you wrote, Road to Awesome. But maybe can you walk me and just the listeners through, why you started that book and what it's at its core, what it's about?
Sure, of course. So when prior to being a superintendent, you mentioned I'm a superintendent in Colorado. Prior to that, I was a high school principal. And the school that I was at, I was there for 11 years, first as an assistant principal, and then I was fortunate enough to be the principal. And the school itself, we really did not have a very good culture when I first arrived. And I didn't know enough at the time to know that. But our culture was really all about let's catch people doing things wrong, whether it was kids or adults, didn't matter. And I'm embarrassed of the guy that I was that first year, but I was really good at it. I mean, really good at catching people doing things wrong, especially kids. And yes, my job was discipline and attendance. And so most people assume, and I still have these conversations every day with people assume that the principal, the only time the principal comes into play is when a kid's in trouble. The reality is, as a principal, I never did discipline. I had 100 other things that I did. But yeah, so I started in discipline and attendance, and we're in a staff meeting. And this is actually when Road to Awesome, which is my personal brand, this is when it was created. I didn't know it at the time, but this is when it was created. We're in this staff meeting and we're talking about what are we going to do about hats and cell phones? I mean, like these are really important things, right? But, at the time we really felt like they are. If we could just get kids to put away their cell phones and take off their hats, then, well, our test scores would go up and all the, no, they're not connected. But during this meeting, somewhere between, well, let's make them all hang them up when they come in, or let's do this, or let's do that, somebody raised their hand and said, hey, why does it always have to be about what they do wrong? Why can't it be about what they do right? And for me, it was like a bolt of lightning struck right at my feet. And it kind of broke me out of this, wow, I've been all about, where do I go hide so I can catch a kid smoking a cigarette in the bathroom? I mean, seriously, why am I doing this stuff? This is ridiculous. This is not how you treat people. And when those two questions were asked, the lady's name is Spring. She is still a social worker. Those two questions just shook my core. And I know there were a number of people in the room as well that it shook their core too. And it allowed us to take a step back and say, okay, is this really what we want our school to be about? We have 1,000 kids and I was doing over 2,000 discipline referrals a year. It was insane. So we decided, hey, let's take a look at this. How can we focus on what they do right? And over the next several years, it became about recognizing, rewarding, reinforcing good attendance, good behavior, being engaged in activities and all kinds of things. And that first year that I was there, our graduation rate was 69%. Our average daily attendance rate was 84%, which is atrocious. And my last 2 years as the building principal, our graduation rates were into the 80% range. Average daily attendance was like 93, 94%. Changing our culture changed our school. And it changed, honestly, it changed the way we did business. Yeah, we still had to deal with, some inappropriate behavior here and there. But instead of, dealing with, 105 fights a year, we had 3 because we didn't put the spotlight on that. We put the spotlight on, kids who raised their GPA by 0.5 or kids who were involved in an activity all year long or whatever the case may be. And looking back on that work, and then when I became a superintendent, being charged with, hey, we need to work on our culture in our district, got me really reflecting on what is it that made the work we did in Rock Springs successful. And it came back to the 6 things that I believe in. You got to lead from your values. You got to build great culture. You've got to empower your kids. You've got to empower and grow your teachers. You better tell your story, and then you better coach everybody. And that's kind of the core of what the book is. It's told very much from a story perspective. There's you can't go a couple pages without me telling another story, whether it's about kids or about a little bit about me as a kid or just, interactions that I've had and that kind of thing that tie to each of those chapters. And then ultimately the final chapter gives an individual reader or leadership team or however they're doing this a chance to examine their own priorities. You see, Brett, in this book, what I don't want, and this happens very frequently in leadership books, I don't want anybody to think that because I think these are the 6 most important things, that's some kind of magic potion. It's
Right.
not. It's what works for me. What works for me is I know what's important to me and I know what I value and I lead from that place. So I want people who read Road to Awesome to identify what's important to them and does it align with how you lead, because if there's a disconnect, you can't be an authentic leader when you don't have those 2 things married.
Totally. There is so much there that I'd like to unpack. I think the first thing is just that we all have it. We all have these moments, and they can be just in your standard run-of-the-mill staff meeting or whatever it is where somebody says something and it just is a breakthrough for somebody else. And it sounds like that happened to you. It was a lightning bolt and it paved the way for what you're about and what you recognize. I'm certainly curious just in terms of changing the culture at your former school that you're the principal of. How long did it take for you to shift culture to, move from disciplining everyone doing everything wrong to really recognizing and empowering students? How long of a process was that? And then how did you get other people that you are working with to buy into this new way or new culture within the school?
That is such a great question. And, I've answered a lot of questions about this book over the last several weeks, and that is actually not one that's been asked. I love that question. So I'll start with this. When we very first, the start of my second year there, we had made this decision that we were going to develop, this process through which we would shine the spotlight on the positives and not so much on the negatives. We had written a grant and had an opportunity to go to a conference, the Jocelyn's Renaissance Conference, which I'll be honest with you, changed my life. And we came back and we did kind of like a kickoff rally for all of our staff. And I had one of the coaches after our little staff rally came in and yelled at me and said, "You're the reason I didn't get my wrestling uniforms." For some reason, they didn't budget wrestling uniforms for him. And he assumed because we did this, that was why he didn't get his wrestling uniforms. And I mean, the reality was the monies were not connected, but that's in a nutshell, kind of in some ways it wasn't accepted well, because, we weren't just going to move people's cheese. We were going to pick it up and throw it across the parking lot. it was uncomfortable. There were a number of people who were really on board with this. And one of the smartest things we did was we empowered our students to be a part of it and very much made it a student-led effort. And having our students be the voice behind this work, I think helped accelerate the process. I would tell you that there's a moment I remember like it happened yesterday. And I want to say this was probably 4 years into this process. There was a night like any other Friday night in the fall, a home football game, and the pep band plays and those kinds of things. And our halftime shows were always, the band, the cheerleaders, the dance team. And this particular night, the football team was losing. And at halftime, just after the band performed, the audio system went out. And so our cheerleaders were trying to perform their routine without music. And they did fine. And the crowd really appreciated it. The sound system went out as they were doing it. So they knew what was happening. And then the dance team took the field and they finally just said, you know what, we're just going to do it without music. The cheerleaders knew their routine and they started clapping a beat for them. And then the band joined in. It was an incredible moment. And then the entire crowd joined in. And so to me, it was just this incredible display of resiliency. And then our football team came back and they ended up winning a game in overtime. And the student body rushed the field. And I told them, you can't go out yet. You can't go out yet. But instead of just running on the field like any other high school group would do, they actually went down on the sidelines and they linked arms. And the football team came and linked arms across from them. And they sang our school song.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff.
I get a little emotional telling that story. I haven't told that story in a long time. I remember turning to my activities director. His name is Tom. And I said, Tom, this is the moment we'll always remember that our culture changed. And from that point forward, I know there's always going to be bumps and you're always working on your school culture. But that was a moment where there was zero question that our school was our school. It was everybody. It was our community, and a real powerful moment. And here in my current district, we were not at that same place in terms of the beginning culture. It was not this, really broken, let's catch him doing it wrong kind of thing. But we've had a few of those moments here where you just see it. And what it all comes back to in both cases, and this was to me the secret sauce, was putting the kids in charge. They knew that we trusted them, and they knew, if it wasn't okay, we weren't going to get, really angry or anything like that. We were just going to say, okay, let's figure out how we can do it different. And, that I think that ultimately comes back to why, one of my 6 things is we've got to empower our kids because they're ready to be leaders right now.
Absolutely. That's a heck of a story, and it makes me itchy to get out and watch some Friday night football here.
I know. Unfortunately, in Colorado, it will be February before we see high school football. So. Oh
wow, yeah, and they're giving it a go here in Indiana. So where I went to high school, there's a very, very rich tradition of football. So it's kind of making that story just, I had so many images going in my head about the whole student body and everything else, but that's a cool story for sure.
It was a very, very special moment, and one that, I hadn't told that in a while. So sorry, I actually get a little choked up telling my own story. That's weird.
So. No, I get it. It's the passion. It's the passion behind it. So let's talk about the process you're going through. You've got staff, you're trying to get them motivated, get in good headspace, get inspired. You're working with them, and you've got lots of different types of roles and people, and you are developing leaders as you do your job and you work through this back to school timeframe. So I'm sure you're seeing a lot of great leadership and action just by looking at your staff and looking how they're responding to certain situations. Can you maybe talk about just the difference from your perspective on like what defines good leadership and then what defines great leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably one of the biggest separators between good leaders and great leaders begins with the quality with which and the willingness with which the person is willing to listen. I've worked around a lot of good leaders, but the truly great leaders that I've been blessed to be around, every time you have a conversation with them, you are the only person in the room. I mean, you could be in a room with 100, but when you're talking, it's you and that person. Great leaders have an incredible ability to really, truly devote focus to that input, to that feedback that we need. We need to hear from people. I think it's very easy, and I tell young leaders this all the time. I remind my leaders all the time. We have a million things to get done, but nothing's more important than listening. So, when you're in that conversation, don't get the cell phone out. Don't send an email while somebody's talking. You need to be dialed into them. I think another thing is really great leaders. They're not able to just see that long-term vision or even are able to put together like this incredible plan. I will tell you, and this is probably sacrilegious in leadership, and so this is where the outlier in me comes out. I don't really believe very strongly in strategic plans. I think that there's a great place for planning, but I think we have to have some flexibility. But if we can really see and really be clear around our vision, then putting together the steps, and this is probably why I struggle so much with strategic planning, is a lot of times those steps become so like lockstep. This person must do this. Mm-hmm. And they're written by people who aren't necessarily the people whose names are in those boxes, which means then, I have to tell other people, you have to go do this and you have to do it this way. The great leaders I've been around have said, this is what I'm thinking about, and have heard me or others say, yeah, what if we did it this way, and then got out of the way. Yeah, it's a great idea. Go make it happen. I think you have to be willing to let go of control. Mm-hmm. That's not easy. It really is not easy, but it starts with listening. If you're willing to listen, it's a little easier to let go of control because you really know and are able to trust the people that are around you. I think the other thing too, really truly great leaders, they're going to build relationships. I worked under a leader who told all of us on the very first day, I am not here to be your friend, and I am not going to build a relationship with you. And it was pretty clear to all of us that wasn't going to last. You've got to be willing to be a human being, to be in a leadership role, at least to be successful at it for a long period of time.
Yeah, the couple things I picked up on there was the ability to let go of control and let just people do their jobs. And I think the strategic plan element is something that I can relate to, especially when you are trying to create a big vision. You got to let people operate in real time. And I think what I've learned in talking with educators from all over the country, like failure is okay because, you're not going to hit it out of the park every day, but it's those experiences where you're trying something new that you learn and you adapt and you evolve, and then you can take that with you and drive forward. And as long as what you're doing has the intention of pointing back to the vision that's been laid out, that's where I find really smart people start to do really innovative things. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. When I first came to this district, they kind of charged me with three things. Let's improve communication, improve the culture, and we need a strategic plan. And they had failed with several start-stops attempts on strategic planning. And very early in the process, talking with community members and that kind of stuff, nobody wanted to hear strategic and plan in the same sentence. I mean, they were like, just don't talk to me about that. And so instead I just started talking about the vision. Let's talk about what our vision is. What do we want? What do we want this to be? And I think that made it a lot easier for us to go in the direction we wanted to go. And, it's not always true though in education that failure is okay. That comes down to leadership too. We have to be willing to create environments that our teachers work in, that our school leaders work in, where they're comfortable with exactly that, if I make a mistake, it's not fatal. Because the reality is, and you were touching on this a little bit too, when you give that space and you give that grace to just take risk, to just get out there and try to be innovative, sure, sometimes things don't work, and okay, as a leader, be the person to put your hand down and lift them up, dust them off and say, okay, get back in the game. You're all right. But when those spaces do exist, oh my goodness, some of the most innovative things can happen. I had a couple of teachers who worked with me when I was the principal in Rock Springs, and we had created just from somebody's vision, these 3 schools within a school that were focused around specific career areas. And it was really nice to be able to have kids, who are interested in health careers to still take the core curriculum, but have it, spiced a little bit with things that connected to health careers, or kids who are interested in energy careers or engineering, or kids who are interested in law enforcement or public service. But where the real innovation happened was when the directors started asking questions of, hey, what if we could get our kids to do this? Okay, let's try it. Let's see what happens. And, getting kids out into our community, spending many hours working alongside professionals while earning their, credits in high school has put some unbelievable things into the lives of those kids now and still futures for kids who are still there. And that was just simply, I fell in love with saying yes. It's easy to say no, but man, saying yes is so much fun. When people are given the opportunity, it's incredible what'll happen. You said smart people will do unbelievable things when they have a space to innovate in. And unfortunately, I just don't think it happens often enough. But I will say this, one of what I think is one of the just golden ticket moments for us right now as a result of COVID is in most states, there will be probably no state testing, which means the state's accountability models will be set aside. This is that moment. Mm-hmm. This is that moment where we say, hey, let's go do something cool, and let's make them create an accountability system to give us credit for this, because this is that good.
Yeah, it's that outside the box thinking and just yeah, I agree. There's a lot of opportunity during this time. I'm excited to see what happens on the other end. There's so much to talk about, but maybe we close out with this.
Okay.
What for you going into this back to school time frame, what is ultimately, what does success look like for you? What when you wake up and this school year is over with, what are you looking for? Like what will you hang your hat on and say, man, that was a successful year if this happens?
I don't know that there's going to be anything that will be, connected to any data or anything like that. I mean, there's obviously, we get to the end of May and everybody is still happy and healthy, obviously, but I don't want us to just survive. I want us to really thrive this year. And to me, what would make it a successful year would be to look back and see 2 or 3 of those starfish moments. I say starfish moment. I'll just tell this real quick. Something that's very important to me, the starfish story. Every kid is like a starfish. And if, they wash up on the beach and they dry out, you're going to lose them. But if we have the opportunity to get them back in the ocean and be successful, those are those starfish moments where we make a difference for just one kid. So if there are 3 or 4 stories that come out of this year that we can point to the work we do, the care that we have for our kids, the love we have for our community shines through those 3 or 4 stories, whether it's a project a kid did that was impactful on our community, or an internship a high school student had that has completely reshaped their future, or even, I don't know, something really cool coming out of, first or second or third grade. It's about finding those starfish moments. And so I would say if we can walk away and say we've got 3 or 4 of those, that's a success right there.
Absolutely. I think to me, this one's about leadership. This one's about adapting. And there's a lot here. There's so much more too that I want to talk about, but maybe we can have you back midstream in the year and just
that'd be great.
Hear how things are going. Before we close this out, where can people find you and where can they check out your book?
Yeah, absolutely. So on all my social media platforms, I'm Darrin M. Peppard. So that's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, Darrin M. Peppard. My website, which is www.roadtoawesome.net. On the website, you can find all kinds of stuff about the keynote speaking I do, the leadership coaching I do, professional development that I do. You can actually purchase a copy of the book on the website, but you can also purchase a copy of the book on Amazon.
Got to have placement on Amazon these days.
Absolutely. That's right.
Yeah. It's become the new way of life during quarantine. It's like grocery store, buy the leadership book, all the other stuff. Yeah.
There you go. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I know it's busy, especially this time of year, but best of luck to you starting the school year strong, and take it easy and stay safe.
Right on. I really appreciate it, Brett. Thanks so much. And I know it's not a school year for you, but I hope the year goes well.
Thank you. Had a ton of fun with that one. Need to bring Darrin back on. There was so much more I wanted to talk about. Go follow Darrin. Go check out Road to Awesome if you haven't already. Hit that subscribe button. Leave us that 5-star review. We do appreciate that. We wish you the best of luck getting back to school and getting organized. Take care. Stay safe. And we'll talk to you real soon.